Hi and welcome to our new video. This is the Ninja Double Stack XL Air Fryer. We tested it for you, and you'll find out everything you need to know in this video, so just stay tuned. Okay, before we get to the practical test, let's look at some basic info. The Ninja Double Stack XL has a power output of 2,470 watts and a 9.5-liter capacity. The special feature of this appliance is that it's built vertically, not horizontally. That means we have two cooking zones stacked on top of each other, unlike classic dual-chamber air fryers, which have two zones side by side. This makes the appliance much easier to fit in a kitchen. It even fits on the countertop and under the wall cabinets. To be safe, of course, it makes sense to measure at home to see if the appliance really fits. The device itself is 38 centimeters high and 29 centimeters wide. Where the appliance unfortunately requires a bit more space is its depth. We measured 48 centimeters here. Definitely check if your countertop can handle that. The space-saving design isn't the only feature, though. Another characteristic of this device is that it comes with wire racks that you can insert into the baskets. This is supposed to let you cook 4 items at once, and there's an extra function for that called the Double Stack Pro function. You're meant to turn this on when you're cooking more than one item in a single basket, and it's supposed to ensure more even results. We'll take a closer look in the practical test to see if that actually works. And then we have another feature, but it's not really special anymore. Most dual-chamber air fryers have it by now, the sync and match function. This means I can synchronize the baskets when I'm preparing different foods and also match the settings when I'm cooking the same items. And then we have a few more, smaller details that are still quite useful. First, there are carrying handles on the bottom of the unit, so if you do want to store it away, it's a bit easier. Then, we have 4 non-slip feet installed under the unit. This helps prevent the appliance from sliding around when I pull the baskets in and out. And we measured a cable length of about 80 centimeters. That's a bit short for these devices, but you have to admit this appliance is also intended to be kept on the countertop, so in that respect, I think a slightly shorter cable is probably fine. And now, of course, we come to the accessories. Included are the 2 baskets, each with 4.75 liters. Then we have 2 non-stick crisper plates, 2 wire racks, the quick start guide including a few recipes, and naturally, you can't forget the other paperwork. By the way, if you're interested in the product, check out the description below the video. You can find all the links there. Otherwise, let's get to the main event, our practical test. And here, we want to start with the controls. The first thing that stands out is that we have a display with buttons and a rotary dial, and that's actually something special. Most appliances don't have this. Most have a touchscreen, and as a rule, that makes them a bit worse to use. Real buttons and a proper dial definitely offer a more pleasant, precise, and premium-feeling operation, so that's a good start. The temperature range on this appliance generally goes from 40 to 240 degrees Celsius, but it can vary depending on which program you've selected. For example, you only reach 240 degrees on the Max Crisp setting and 40 degrees only on the Dehydrate setting. The timer generally goes from 1 minute to 12 hours, but just like the temperature, it can vary depending on the program. Most programs offer a time setting of up to 60 minutes or, at best, a few hours. Only the Dehydrate program manages to go all the way up to 12 hours. As for adjusting the settings, the temperature can be set in 5-degree increments and the time in 1-minute increments, unless it's a matter of hours, like with the Dehydrate setting. In that case, the time intervals are a bit larger. There are 6 predefined programs, or presets, in total. Air fry, roast, max crisp, reheat, bake, and dehydrate. You simply select them using the dial. There's also a button for match and another for sync. And of course, you can also just set everything individually if you want to. Setting longer time and temperature intervals is definitely easy to do with the dial. But now, more on the sync and match function. Match copies the settings from the first basket to the second, and sync synchronizes the baskets. This means the basket with the shorter cooking time will initially show hold, and basically wait for the other basket. This way, both baskets are finished at the exact same time, which of course makes sense when you want to prepare different foods. Okay, enough talk. Now we want to know what this thing can do. So off to our test kitchen. We want to start here with the French fries, and unfortunately, the results are a bit uneven. The reason for this is the heat distribution, which is due to the design. Unlike other air fryers, the hot air doesn't come from the top, but from the back. That's the only way to stack 2 baskets on top of each other instead of side by side. But what unfortunately happens then is that the heat tends to collect in the front part of the basket and less of it reaches the back. You can mitigate this effect with frequent turning, but you can't completely get rid of the problem. The result remains largely uneven. The fries that are done are crispy on the outside, tender and very potatoey on the inside, just how you know it from an air fryer. The fries that aren't done, well, they're edible, but unfortunately a bit limp and soft. Other air fryers can do this better, or rather, more evenly. We have the same problem with the chicken nuggets. They're basically cooked and look good, but on closer inspection they're a bit unevenly cooked and, overall, not quite as crispy as from other air fryers in the same cooking time. The take and bake rolls, on the other hand, were good. You didn't notice the heat distribution problem as much here. Perfectly baked, golden brown on the outside, hot and fluffy on the inside. With the potato wedges, it's the same story as with the fries. A slightly uneven result. The wedges that are done are nice and crispy on the outside and cooked through. They are fluffy and potatoey on the inside as well, so that's all good. Visually very appealing too, in my opinion. However, the wedges that didn't get as done are, as before, edible, but just not as nice and crispy as you'd like. What we can't forget, of course, are the chicken wings. We got a visually very nice result here from the Ninja as well. Everything was cooked through and tasted good, at least in our view. But here too, a bit uneven, at least a bit compared to other appliances. It looked a bit different with the muffins. This uneven cooking didn't manifest as much. Here we got good results overall, firm on the outside, fluffy on the inside, and, of course, a very nice color. So, nothing to complain about here. And no, in case one of you is asking, what about the Double Stack Pro function? Doesn't that save the day in terms of evenness and crispiness? The answer is, unfortunately, not really. After we tested the fryer normally without the Double Stack Pro function, we did another complete run where we used this function, and there just wasn't a really noticeable effect. With a lot of imagination, you could maybe say a little, but the fundamental design flaw remained. The hot air collected more in the front of the basket, and not as much reached the back. Even with regular turning, the results just didn't get as even as in other appliances. Some things get crispy, yes, but a lot of it stays relatively soft. And in terms of speed, this appliance, in our opinion, also needs a bit longer than other air fryers. We noted about 30 to 40% longer. So, overall, you have to say, what a shame. Oh well, let's move to the next point, which is handling. Like with any air fryer, the food naturally needs to be shaken in between. However, if you're using the racks, you can't shake the basket, or at least not as easily. How much you need to shake depends on the food you're preparing, but let's assume you have the classics in there, like fries and nuggets. Then it gets difficult. The fries want to be shaken. The nuggets, on the other hand, don't like that as much. They prefer to be handled a bit more gently so they don't lose their breading. But either way, if I were to shake, it wouldn't just affect the nuggets but also the rack, which would come flying at me. This multi-level design sounds good, but you immediately run into this turning problem. And then, of course, there's a very important question because this is a bit different than other air fryers. Does anything fall out of those air vents in the back of the baskets when shaking or turning? And the answer is basically yes, but not as bad as we first thought. If you have something crumbly in the basket and you shake it, crumbs can, of course, fall out through the openings. And I wouldn't overfill it either, especially not with things that could leak, like liquids, or items that contain a lot of water. So you just have to be a bit careful here. But bottom line, it wasn't quite as bad as you might first think. As for the inserts, or these so-called crisper plates, these appliances often have the tendency that when you shake or try to dump food onto a plate, the plates can fall out too. And that's why I'm not a big fan of these inserts. But in this case, the crisper plates passed our shake test quite well. Nothing fell out. As I said, the wire racks are loose, they can fall out, but the crisper plates didn't really move. As for the noise level, this appliance is somewhere around 55 to 60 decibels, which was fine in my opinion. And then, of course, we move on to heat management. Here, the results are as follows. The handle stays cool, the display stays cool. The housing gets hot on the left and right sides, the front and the baskets also get hot. The air from the vent naturally gets quite hot. You have to be a bit careful here. If you hold your hand right up to it, you'll definitely feel it. And then, of course, there's a special consideration with this fryer. It's designed to be left out on the counter. And of course, your kitchen countertop might still not be big enough so that you get closer to an edge or a corner. And indeed, the heat does reach the corner, at least in our case. But I had the feeling that it was still within limits. It can get pretty warm, but it wasn't much more than that. Nevertheless, you should leave enough space between the air fryer and the wall or kitchen cabinets if possible. Okay, let's move to the next point. Build quality and cleaning. Let's start with the build quality. The panel gaps aren't quite perfect here and there, and there's also a ripple or two in the plastic. That's what I noticed first as not being so great. The display, on the other hand, is well fitted and seems quite high quality. And if we're being honest, the overall impression is that this is a really nice-looking appliance. Ninja definitely knows how to do that. And aside from those minor things I just mentioned, I find that, all in all, it's a well-put-together appliance in terms of its build. Regarding cleaning, the baskets and crisper plates are dishwasher safe. That's good to begin with. The racks are actually not mentioned in the user manual. We were daring anyway and just put them in the dishwasher, and at least visually, nothing bad happened to them. But it's probably not what the manufacturer intended. You should probably wash them by hand. As for the dishwasher results, we can say that the parts, by and large, came out reasonably clean. So, from our perspective, there was nothing to complain about. Let's get to the conclusion. The Ninja Double Stack is in the mid to higher price range, and it's selling really well. That's obvious. And the reason for it, in my opinion, is also obvious. Because you can place it better than other air fryers, and it's actually the first real air fryer variant that you can seriously integrate into your kitchen long-term. That's understandable. From my point of view, unfortunately, Ninja still has a bit of work to do when it comes to the core function. Being able to place the appliance well is one thing, but at the same time, it naturally has to keep up with other devices on the market in terms of handling, heat distribution, and speed. Or simply put, in its cooking results. From my perspective, it just can't, unfortunately. But we've known the Ninja brand for several years. It's not for nothing that they are one of the major players when it comes to air fryers. They have always shown themselves to be innovative, and they try things out. And I would bet that the problems with the double stack have already been noticed, and that they are already working on an improved or a completely new alternative. So, from my perspective, we can be excited to see what's next. If this appliance is interesting to you, check out the description below the video. We've linked it for you there. And if you're not sure at all which appliance is the right one for you, then check out this video right here. We compared a whole bunch of different air fryers, and I'm sure that will help you find the right one.